Chapter 36:17. The discussions and rumors of the Taotai clan were somewhat different from the truth. At least the vast majority of the clansmen did not understand the clan leader's true thoughts. All the clansmen thought that clan leader Tao Yongxing did not want to become enemies with the dragon race and would definitely give Long Tian a satisfactory explanation. But in reality, Tao Yongxing had already sharpened the butcher's knife and dug the trap. Tao Yongxing was a very shrewd powerhouse. Even though the greed, cunning and brutality in the Taotai clan's bones could not be changed. But he was very good at doing superficial work. His discipline and restraint of ordinary clansmen were also mainly persuasion and education. In the long run, even the Taotai clan felt that the Taotai clan scrupulously abided by their duties and was hospitable, never causing trouble, let alone bullying other races. However, only the deacons, elders and priests who were strong enough and had high enough status understood the true meaning of clan leader Tao Yongxing. That was, they could commit crimes and plunder greedily, but they must plan before acting. No matter what, they could not let the news spread and damage the reputation of the Taotai clan. Regarding this, the deacons and elders of the Taotai clan admired and agreed from the bottom of their hearts. If Tao Yongxing did not request this, the Taotai clan's reputation would be ruined very quickly if they were allowed to do as they pleased, plundering crazily and bullying other races based on their nature. In a few years' time, the Taotai clan would become the scum that everyone shouted at, hated and besieged by countless demons. If that was the case, the Taotai clan would be finished no matter how powerful it was. Tao Yongxing did this to protect the Taotai clan's 10,000 years of foundation. For close to 10,000 years, the Taotai clan's powerhouses murdered at least hundreds of thousands of foreign race powerhouses. But the outside world only spread some groundless, specious stories and discussions, but there was very little real evidence. Many demons did not have a good impression of the Taotai clan and were very wary, but they could not produce evidence that the Taotai clan harmed the demons. This was Tao Yongxing's credit. Inside Wuxian Palace, the Grand Elder and the 4 elders had been sitting in the palace all along, monitoring that secret chamber in the depths of the palace at all times. A full 3 days had passed and everyone did not relax for a moment. Fortunately, the door of that secret chamber was also tightly shut and had never been opened. The few elders did not care about what Zhi Tianxing was doing in the secret chamber. They only knew that when the clan leader ordered to see Zhi Tianxing, his death date would arrive. Inside the divine pagoda, spacetime was distorted. Zhi Tianxing was sitting cross-legged under the blood flame sacred tree, concentrating on cultivating and healing his injuries. Only 3 days had passed in the outside world, but he had already been in seclusion for 5 months. In the past 5 months he had refined Tao Changji and Tao Wangchuan's godheads. Not only had his strength increased, but he had also gained 5 new types of divine Tao laws. Although Tao Wangchuan and Tao Zhangji were both low-level divine kings, refining their godheads didn't give Zhi Tianxing much of an improvement. However, both of them were from the Taotai clan, and the innate ability of the Taotai clan was to devour all things. From ancient times until now, there was a legend circulating in the dragon realm. It was said that the Taotai clan was the greediest clan in the world and could devour everything for their own use. They were like bottomless pits that could never be filled. Not to mention the tens of thousands of monsters in the dragon realm, even heaven and earth would be devoured by Taotai. It could be seen from this how powerful the Taotai clan's devouring talent was. Coincidentally, when Zhi Tianxing ascended to the divine world back then, he unexpectedly obtained the devouring talent in the ascension pool. For so many years he had also relied on the devouring talent to refine countless cultivation resources and rapidly increased his strength. This was virtually exactly the same as the Taotai clan's innate divine ability. Hence he refined Tao Wangchuan and Tao Zhangji's godheads and deprived the two of their devouring talent. Fusing with his devouring talent, it made his devouring divine ability go up a level, becoming even more powerful and perfect. In a short 1 month's time, Zhi Tianxing completed this matter. In the following 4 months he had been using the devouring talent all along, devouring cultivation resources frenziedly. Regardless of whether it was the blood flame sacred tree's divine fruits, or the divine stones, source stones, divine pills and various divine artifacts stored in his interspatial ring, they were all devoured and refined by him. In 4 months' time the cultivation resources stored in his interspatial ring actually decreased by 20%. Cultivation resources worth 50 billion divine stones were devoured by him just like that. At the thought of this, Ji Tianxing's heart ached and he was reluctant to part with them. However, after devouring so many resources, he was very satisfied with the benefits and results that he had obtained. Not only had he recovered from his injuries, but he had also recovered to his peak condition. His strength had also increased by 6 times. Naturally, he had reached the peak of the 5th level of the Divine King realm. Ever since Ji Tianxing had recovered to the Divine King realm, this was the first time his strength had increased at such a rapid speed. Previously, when he had broken through to the 5th level of the Divine King realm, it was when he was on his way to the Xuanji Grotto. In less than a month he had reached the peak of the 5th level of the Divine King realm. If news of such a terrifying speed of growth were to spread, it would definitely shock countless divine kings. Even Ji Tianxing himself felt a wave of worry and relief. Fortunately, I am a reincarnated cultivator. I was a peak divine king in my previous life. Now that my strength has increased so rapidly, my body and soul can still withstand it. Other divine kings, even the experts of the Taotai clan, would not be able to do this. But even so, this kind of strength increase will still threaten my foundation of the divine Tao. I have to settle down in this realm for a period of time and strengthen my foundation of the divine Tao before I can break through to the next realm. Otherwise, my foundation of the divine Tao will be damaged and I will stop at the peak divine king realm in this life. It will be very difficult to pursue the realm of the God Emperor. Ji Tianxing analyzed the pros and cons of rapidly increasing his strength and reminded himself silently. Of course, he was now in the star-devouring grotto heaven, trapped in a devil's den. He would face the threat of death at any time. This kind of strength increase was also forced by circumstances. Tao Yongxing is sanctimonious. On the surface he is hypocritical and pretentious. Secretly he has the intention to kill. He will definitely think of ways to get rid of me. He can deceive others and deceive the Taotai clan, but he can't deceive me. Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation and pondered and analyzed silently. I have been in seclusion for 5 months and 3 days have passed in the outside world. If he has some scheme he should be done preparing and about to take action, right? Thinking of this, he got up and left the divine tower, returning to the secret chamber. He was about to walk out of the secret chamber to test the reactions of the few elders. Unexpectedly, someone knocked on the door of the secret chamber, and a dull knocking sound came from the door. Dong dong dong. The thick and heavy stone door was knocked with a dull sound, and it was still flickering with a dazzling divine light. He really came. This thought flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind, and the corner of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. He raised his hand and opened the secret chamber's stone door. He saw the white-haired great elder standing at the door of the secret chamber, and the other 4 elders followed behind him. Seeing Ji Tianxing appear, the great elder squeezed out a smile and pretended to laugh heartily. "Young Master Long, I have good news to tell you. The Patriarch has found out the truth and invited you to the Starry Cliff for a banquet. He wants to give you an explanation in person." Chapter 36:18. Starry Cliff? A banquet? Ji Tianxing frowned as he looked at the Grand Elder. He felt that the Grand Elder's smile was extremely fake. However, the current situation was very clear. The Taotai Patriarch and several elders wanted to kill him, but because of the Taotai clan's reputation, they were still acting. If he shed all pretense of cordiality and forcibly broke out of the encirclement and escaped from the star-devouring paradise, the experts of the Taotai clan would immediately take action to kill him. Even the entire Taotai clan, including several thousand Taotai clansmen, would besiege him. Therefore, Ji Tianxing could only endure and cooperate with the Taotai Patriarch's act. He could only look for an opportunity to counterattack and escape in the other party's scheme. The Grand Elder still maintained a gentle smile as he patiently explained, "Young Master Long, please rest assured. The Patriarch has always been fair and impartial. He will definitely not favor those 2 elders. As far as I know, those 2 elders were severely punished by the Patriarch. In order to express his apology and to highlight the seriousness of the matter, the Patriarch set up a banquet at the Starry Cliff and invited you face to face. The Patriarch wants to apologize to you face to face and compensate you." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked, "It's fine if it's in the Patriarch's palace. Why does it have to be at the Starry Cliff?" After refining Tao Wangchuan and Tao Changji's godheads, he naturally obtained the memories of the 2 god kings. Therefore he knew the exact location of the starry cliff. The Grand Elder explained with a smile. Young Master Long may not know, but the starry cliff is our star-devouring paradise's unique scenic spot. You can overlook the boundless starry sky and enjoy the scene of billions of stars. Normally, the patriarch will only set up a banquet at the starry cliff when he receives distinguished guests. Hearing this, a thought suddenly flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. This camp is right in the middle of the star-devouring paradise. The starry cliff is north of the camp, at the edge of the star-devouring paradise. The exit of the star-devouring paradise is at the southern edge of the camp, close to 100,000 miles from here. If the patriarch and the grand priest are both at the starry cliff, then wouldn't my chances of escaping be very high? Therefore Ji Tianqing pretended to casually ask, "Are we going to the starry cliff now? The patriarch and the grand priest are already waiting there?" The great elder didn't reply immediately. Instead he furrowed his brows in vigilance. After a moment of silence he smiled and replied, "The patriarch and the high priest are dealing with some clan affairs. We will go to the starry cliff first and the patriarch and the high priest will follow. If young Master Long doesn't want to go first, then we can wait a little longer. When the patriarch and the high priest are done with their affairs, we can go to the star cliff together." It was obvious that Tao Yongxing and the high priest had also left a card up their sleeves to prevent Ji Tianqing from escaping. Ji Tianqing frowned. He was a little disappointed and could only give up the idea of taking the opportunity to escape. Thus he waved his hand and said, "No need to wait. Let's go to Starry Cliff first. It just so happens that this prince has only heard of the wonders of the Starry Cliff before, but has never seen it with his own eyes. Let's go over first. This king can also admire the vast starry sky." "That's good." The first elder nodded with a satisfied smile. After that the 5 elders took Ji Tianqing and left Wuxia Palace, flying towards the north. On the surface, it looked like the 5 elders were accompanying Ji Tianqing. On the way the first elder was very enthusiastic and introduced the star-devouring grotto heaven to Ji Tianqing, as well as the beautiful scenery of the starry cliff. But in reality the 4 elders were silent and vigilant at all times, preventing Ji Tianqing from suddenly injuring or escaping. A distance of more than 90,000 miles was not far for the God Kings. After a short 45 minutes, everyone arrived at the northern border of the star-devouring grotto heaven and arrived at the bottom of the starry cliff. There were barren mountains all around and beneath everyone's feet was a wasteland full of gravel. And right in front of them, near the edge of the transparent spatial barrier, there was a lone peak that was 10,000 feet tall. That lone peak looked as if it had been hacked by an axe. The front was very steep and the back was a straight cliff. The cliff was close to the transparent spatial barrier, and outside was the dark starry sky. And at the top of the lone peak, on the mountain peak with a radius of 100 miles, stood a simple and dignified palace. Tao Yongxing's banquet to entertain Ji Tianqing was in that palace. Zhou. The 5 elders brought Ji Tianqing to the top of the starry cliff and landed outside the palace. Ji Tianqing pretended not to notice the approaching danger and looked around curiously, revealing an amazed expression. The legendary starry cliff does not disappoint. Behind this cliff is the spatial barrier of the star-devouring grotto heaven, and beyond it is the vast starry sky. Ordinary people stay in the dragon realm, which is extremely far away from outer space. But here, between us and the vast starry sky, is only a spatial barrier. Ji Tianqing admired the vast starry sky as he exclaimed. But in reality he secretly used the divine eye mystic technique and used his divine sense to explore the entire starry cliff. In a short while he discovered the problem. Just as he had guessed, today's banquet was a trap. Chapter 36:19. Peng Fei was still very talented in this aspect of causing trouble. There was a period of time when the 5 elders were confused and disoriented by his continuous barrage of questions. As a result, their attention was diverted by Peng Fei. Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to observe the divine formation sealing the palace and indeed saw the trick. But the good times did not last long. As he began to move and change his position to observe the divine formation, first elder finally came back to his senses. He sensed that Ji Tianqing's actions were suspicious and guessed that Ji Tianqing was suspicious and was observing and guarding against something. Unfortunately, he was firmly entangled by Peng Fei and could not escape. Therefore, he secretly transmitted his voice to the other elders and said, "Leave this Peng brat to me." You guys keep an eye on Long Tian and don't let him play any tricks. The elders nodded secretly and hurriedly turned to leave, wanting to keep an eye on and pester Ji Tianxing. But Ping Fei's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He held back the two elders with one hand. The two elders were somewhat angry and glared at him with sharp gazes. But he had a cheeky look as if he did not see the two elders' angry gazes and pestered the two of them. The two elders were angry but could not fall out with Peng Fei and could only impatiently deal with him. Just like that, Peng Fei held back the three elders alone. Seeing this, the other two elders hurriedly left to harass and pester Ji Tianxing. However, Ji Tianxing's performance gave the two elders a headache. He was actually able to multitask. While observing the divine formation, he was also able to deal with the two elders. No matter if the two elders asked questions, chatted, or deliberately blocked and disturbed Ji Tianxing's mind, Ji Tianxing was not affected at all. He had a smile on his face. While dealing with the two elders, he quickly walked around the palace. The two elders increasingly felt that something was wrong. Full of anxiety, they could not help but intercept Ji Tianxing and restrict his movements. However, Ji Tianxing's movement technique was very ghostly. His figure often flashed and avoided the two elders. Just like that, while both sides restrained their anger and put on an act, they competed with each other with their own thoughts. 100 breaths later, Ji Tianxing still hadn't found a way to break the god array. After all, this was a supreme-grade king-level divine formation. Tao Yongxing and the high priest had spent 3 days setting it up. No matter how profound Ji Tianxing's attainments in the array Dao were, it was impossible for him to find a solution in such a short period of time. However, he had seen through the veins and foundations of the divine formation and found its weak point. Therefore, while dealing with the two elders, he took out one king-grade divine artifact after another and silently dug into the ground. But they were not calm enough and all fled and resisted in a panic. They would expose their backgrounds and backers, hoping that this seat could let them off. Or take out all kinds of treasures and belongings, hoping that this seat would spare their lives. Speaking up to hear, Tao Yongxing paused for a moment. He stared at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze and said in a low voice, "Only you are the most special. Not only did you see through this seat's intentions, you could even maintain your calm and composure. Even knowing that death was at hand, you could still be so calm and confident. Those who don't know would think that you set up an ambush for us and wanted to catch us all in one fell swoop. This seat really wants to know, where did your courage and confidence come from?" Even though Tao Yongxing's tone was low and serious, the high priest and several elders still could not help but want to laugh. After all, this was too ironic and too comical. Ji Tianxing put away his cold smile and ridicule, and looked at Tao Yongxing expressionlessly. A cold light flashed in his right hand, and he took out the sword of burial of heaven. "By the sword in this king's hand." His tone was dignified and cold as he shouted coldly and instantly swung his sword at Tao Yongxing. No one was on guard against Ji Tianxing, who was trapped in a tight encirclement and was undoubtedly going to die, but he was actually so decisive and ruthless. He did not wait for Tao Yongxing and the others to make a move, and he actually dared to assassinate Tao Yongxing first. How confident, how courageous was he? However, as the Taotai clan leader and a 9th-level divine king realm expert, Tao Yongxing was extremely scheming and shrewd. He was already prepared for Ji Tianxing's sudden attack, so he was not surprised at all. When the dazzling sword light shone and went straight to his face, he did not hesitate to teleport 1,000 feet away and appeared at the other end of the hall. Swoosh! The dazzling sword light almost brushed past Tao Yongxing's shoulder, but it did not hurt him at all and he dodged it perfectly. However, Tao Yongxing was strong enough and he was prepared for it, so he could dodge the sword. The few elders standing behind him could not dodge it in time. Even if he used all his strength to block, it would be impossible for him to block this attack. He would be killed instantly. However, at this critical moment he suddenly saw 2 figures appear beside him. Swoosh! Swish! One of them was a middle-aged man from the god race in a green robe, and the other was a stone giant that was 30 meters tall. These 2 middle-level divine kings had appeared in the great battle of the River of Forgetfulness Palace previously. Peng Fei had seen them before and knew that they were Ji Tianxing's guards. He immediately felt more at ease. The green-robed man was Chao Qingyu and the stone giant was Yank. After the 2 of them appeared, they didn't say a word. Instead, they used all their defensive divine skills to block the attacks of the 2 elders. Bam, 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 bam. The next moment, countless sword shadows collided with the shield and the light wall, creating a deafening explosion. In an instant, the entire hall was filled with raging shockwaves and billions of shards of divine light. Rumble. The palace made of special rocks couldn't withstand the destructive impact, and more than half of it collapsed on the spot. The hall that everyone was in turned into rubble. There were broken bricks under their feet and there were dilapidated walls all around. Chao Qingyu and Yank barely managed to fend off the attacks of the two elders and protect Peng Fei. However, the three of them were blasted thousands of meters away and smashed into the rubble. Chao Qingyu and Yank were fine. They didn't suffer any substantial injuries. However, Peng Fei was severely injured by the violent divine power. His internal organs were all shattered and blood kept flowing out of his nose and mouth. On the other side, another figure appeared beside Ji Tianxing. It was a white-haired man from the Phoenix clan with a cold face. It was Bai Feng. Although the two of them joined forces and used all their divine skills to block and neutralize the attacks of the 6 Taotai god kings. However, Tao Yongxing and the high priest were both 9th-stage god kings, and the two strongest god kings in the Taotai clan. The Grand Elder, the Second Elder and Tao Yuxing were all high god kings of the 8th and 7th level. Only the 7th Elder was slightly weaker. He was a 6th-stage god king. The 6 of them joined forces and no one could stop them. Ji Tianxing and Bai Feng were also blasted away and smashed into the rubble thousands of meters away. A few walls were smashed into pieces. When the two of them flew out of the rubble, they were covered in broken bricks and stained with blood. They were in a sorry state. The situation in the field was very clear. Ji Tianxing's side had few people and weak strength. They were not the Taotai clan's powerhouses match at all. Luckily, Ji Tianxing destroyed Tao Rongxin's divine body with one sword, making him lose his combat strength. If not for so, they would be besieged by 7 god kings, and their outcome would be even more miserable. Seeing Peng Fei heavily injured and on the verge of collapse, Ji Tianxing hurriedly opened up the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda and put him away. A battle between god king powerhouses. A high-ranking god lord like Peng Fei did not have the qualifications to take part at all. This was also the reason why Tao Yongxing did not arrange for guards inside and outside the palace. Because those divine lord realm guards, no matter how many there were, they could only be cannon fodder. Ha! Long Tian, this seat knew long ago that you brought along several god king realm guards with you. But this is all futile. You guys better admit defeat obediently and surrender. Tao Yongxing did not take out a divine weapon. Hands behind his back, he looked at Ji Tianxing with a proud expression, laughing loudly with confidence. The high priest and the few elders also spread out one after another, surrounding Ji Tianxing, Bai Feng, Chao Qingyu and Yank, the 4 people. Everyone all revealed a smug cold smile, their eyes mocking and cruel. The atmosphere in the field was very stifling. Yank and Chao Qingyu were still considered calm, trusting Ji Tianxing a lot. But Bai Feng was filled with anxiety and worry. She could not resist looking at Ji Tianxing and transmitting her voice, asking, "Your Excellency, what should we do? You definitely have a way to charge out of the heavy encirclement, right?" Ji Tianxing looked straight ahead, his tone calm as he replied, "Of course." As he said, he raised his head and looked at the sky. More than half of the palace collapsed. His gaze was not obstructed, passing through the translucent spatial barrier, looking at the vast and boundless starry sky. The corners of his mouth suddenly revealed a hint of a playful smile. The vast and boundless starry sky is within reach. At such a close distance, the power of that sword technique will definitely increase explosively by several times, right? He muttered to himself, slowly raising the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand, pointing at the boundless starry sky. Then he shouted in a low voice, "Sword rain." As he shouted coldly, a formless and mysterious vast power erupted from the sword of burial of heaven and his body. Suddenly, the billions of stars in the vast starry sky were attracted by the mysterious power. Chapter 36-22. Ji Tianxing's behavior was a little strange to Tao Yongxing and the others. They could not understand why this guy did not surrender or fight back. What was he trying to do? What was the use of pointing his sword at the starry sky and shouting for no reason? Just as Tao Yongxing, the high priest and the others were full of doubts, Tao Yuxing's expression suddenly changed. He pointed at the starry sky and exclaimed, "Oh my God! The sudden exclamation gave everyone a fright. Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and the elders all looked up at the starry sky. Then they saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. In the gloomy starry sky, tens of thousands of resplendent spots of light lit up. In just a breath's time, more than 30,000 silver light spots descended on the starry cliff like a meteor shower. Then, everyone saw clearly that it was neither light spots nor a meteor shower. It was a total of more than 36,000 starry swords formed by endless starry divine power. Each of the starry swords was more than 3,000 meters long. They looked real, sacred, and majestic. When the 36,000 starry swords passed through the space barrier and entered the starry swallowing grotto heaven, they absorbed half of the starry swallowing grotto heaven's starry divine power and expanded in size. Before the starry swords descended, their terrifying divine power had already shrouded a radius of tens of thousands of miles. The entire starry cliff was shaking. Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and the elders were so suppressed by the terrifying sword power that their faces turned pale. They could not imagine that other than the dragon emperors, there was someone in the world who could use such a terrifying sword Tao divine power. That supreme sword might that was like the rules of the heavenly Tao was enough to destroy everyone's fighting spirit and confidence. At this moment not only the high priest and the elders were shocked, but fear flashed in their eyes. Even Tao Yongxing's expression and eyes became extremely solemn. No, this is no longer a sword Tao divine power but a sword Tao divine rule true meaning. This thought flashed through Tao Yongxing's mind, and his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He suddenly realized that there might be a change in today's hunting plan. Therefore he used his secret technique as fast as he could to operate the Supreme Grade King Grade Divine Array at full power. The divine light shield enveloping the palace instantly expanded to a radius of 100 miles, covering the entire starry cliff. Moreover, the protective barrier flickered with dark red divine light, greatly increasing its defensive power. Rumble. In the next moment, more than 36,000 huge starry swords flooded the starry cliff like a torrential flood. All of the starry swords exploded with the most violent power, fiercely slamming into the blood-red divine light shield. Deafening explosions continued to erupt, reverberating endlessly between the heavens and the earth, spreading tens of thousands of miles away. At this moment, other than Tao Yongxing, the high priest and the other elders all had their hearts in their throats. They were afraid that the divine light barrier would be destroyed, and they would be killed by the divine swords that filled the sky. Fortunately, the blood-red light shield trembled violently and fluctuated crazily. However, only a few cracks appeared on it and it was not destroyed. The first wave of sword rain was blocked by the blood-red light shield. The high priest and several elders heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Tao Yongxing raised his eyebrows and regained his confident smile. He looked at Ji Tianxing and said, Boy, your attainments in sword Tao are indeed amazing. But unfortunately your sword technique is flashy without substance. It can't do anything to the divine array that I have set up. After all, it is a supreme grade king grade divine array that I and many other experts have spent a lot of effort to set up. Originally, a 9th degree realm divine king like Tao Yongxing could not possibly set up a supreme grade king grade divine array. Only peak divine kings and dragon emperor level experts could do it. But this supreme grade king grade divine array was passed down from generation to generation in the Tao Tai clan. It was also a simpler and easier setup supreme grade king grade divine array. Ji Tianxing looked at Tao Yongxing expressionlessly, raised his eyebrows and said, My sword technique is flashy without substance? Your divine array is indeed a supreme grade king grade divine array. But unfortunately, it can only be considered as a bottom grade array among the supreme grade king grade divine arrays. Now I will let you see clearly how weak it is. When his voice fell, his left hand formed a divine art and used a secret technique to secretly control the 9 supreme grade king grade divine artifacts that were buried underground. At the same time, he waved the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and controlled the 36,000 starry giant swords to attack again. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. More than 36,000 starry giant swords danced and shuttled back and forth at an extremely fast speed. They exploded with violent power and bombarded the blood light shield. Boom. Boom boom boom. The blood light shield that was 100 miles in radius suddenly trembled violently and the divine light shield flashed chaotically. Immediately after, Everyone heard 9 consecutive loud rumbling sounds coming from the ground beneath their feet. Suddenly, the ground around the palace ruins cracked and collapsed, and 9 deep pits appeared. There was a destructive divine power shock wave that bloomed with colorful divine light and rushed into the sky with endless dust. Chapter 36-24. Let's go. Ji Tianxing bellowed as he led Bai Feng, Yang and Chao Qingyu out of the sword formation. The Taotai tribe had tried to kill him and steal his bloodline. He had wanted to teach the Taotai tribe an unforgettable lesson by killing at least 6 or 7 upper god kings. However, looking at the current situation, this plan was destined to fail. However, he had not lost anything. Instead, he had killed Tao Rongxin and the 7th elder and injured a few other elders. No matter how he looked at it, he had profited. He had no regrets leaving the star-swallowing cave. However, Tao Yongxing and the Taotai tribe's god kings were filled with anger and killing intent. They were unwilling to let him go. Swallow the heavens and earth. Seeing that Ji Tianxing and the rest were about to leave, Tao Yongxing panicked and bellowed angrily. Then he, the grand priest and a few other elders worked together to cast a spell. They poured their divine power into the primordial chaos bell. In an instant, the primordial chaos bell lit up with crimson light and covered the sky. With the primordial chaos bell as the center, the area within 1,000 miles turned into a crimson whirlpool. The whirlpool spun rapidly and released a power that could swallow everything. It swallowed all the starry swords that were flying in the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of starry swords were swallowed by the crimson whirlpool. They were dissolved and scattered. The primordial chaos bell was like a bottomless abyss that could swallow everything. No matter how fierce the starry swords were, they were all turned into its food. In just 2 breaths, 2,000 starry swords were swallowed and dissolved by the primordial chaos bell. Ji Tianxing led Bai Feng and the rest out of the heaven-destroying sword formation and stood in the dark sky. Seeing this scene, he also frowned and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Damn it! As expected of the Taotai tribe's divine item. Can swallow everything. Looks like my heaven-destroying sword formation cannot trap them and will not be able to delay them for long. In the past, Ji Tianxing didn't know much about the Taotai clan. Now he realized that the Taotai clan's power was far stronger than he had imagined. It couldn't be helped. 1,000 years ago when he was in the Dragon Realm, it was during his rapid growth period. At that time he went from the Heavenly Deity Realm to the Divine Lord Realm, and then to the Divine King Realm. When he reached the 4th level of the Divine King Realm, he left the Dragon Realm for the God Realm. Therefore, the Dragon Realm only knew that the peerless genius Long Tian was like a flash in the pan, and had once bloomed in the Dragon Realm. Only the experts and forces of the celestial world knew of Kenshin's prowess. In comparison, Ji Tianxing had a clearer understanding of the divine world's power structure and the various paradise. Chapter 36-25. Despicable Thief. While he was running away, he still wanted to plunder our tribe's resources. Tao Yongxing roared furiously. His entire body was burning with rage. The grand priest's face darkened. He gritted his teeth and cursed, "This audacious bastard, he really doesn't know what's good for him. It has always been our tribe plundering the other tribes. I didn't expect him to. This is too despicable." The few elders were also furious. They waved their divine weapons and charged over with murderous intent. However, when both parties were still 5,000 miles away, Ji Tianxing and the rest noticed them. Ji Tianxing hurriedly kept a mine into his space ring. He brought Bai Feng and the rest and flew into the Taotai tribe's camp at lightning speed. Seeing this, Tao Yongxing and the grand priest's eyelids twitched. They had a bad feeling in their hearts. In the next moment, their premonition came true. Originally, the Taotai tribe's camp was very peaceful. On the barren land with a radius of 10,000 miles, there were a few hundred palaces and mansions scattered around. Thousands of people from the Taotai tribe stayed in the various palaces and mansions. They were cultivating in seclusion as usual. However, Ji Tianxing and the rest performed their divine skill with all their might. They released an earth-shattering divine skill light shadow that poured down on the camp. Boom, 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 boom. Suddenly, the peaceful Taotai tribe's camp exploded with 5-colored divine light that shot up to the sky. There was a deafening loud noise. At least a few dozen palaces were blasted into ruins by the divine skill light shadow. Hundreds of millions of bricks and stone fragments splattered everywhere. At the same time, a few hundred people from the Taotai tribe died tragically under the bombardment of the divine skill light shadow. The earth-shattering explosion, countless people from the Taotai tribe roared in pain, and the tragic cries of those on the verge of death woke up the surrounding Taotai tribe. Suddenly the entire camp was in an uproar and fell into chaos. Countless people from the Taotai tribe were filled with fear and confusion. They hurriedly rushed out of the palaces and mansions and flew into the sky to check the situation. It was a pity that before they could figure out what was going on, they were drowned by the divine skill light shadow. Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. Breaking Sun Sword. Great Rotating Sacred Sword. Xianxia was the most valiant. He brandished his left fist and his right hand brandished his sword. In a breath's time he displayed 3 ultimate skills. Bai Feng, Chao Qingyu and Yank were not to be outdone either. They unleashed their strongest attacks and used their most destructive moves. Boom boom boom. In the next instant, another few tens of palaces were blasted into ruins by blade lights and sword shadows, and over 1,000 members of the Taotai clan were slaughtered miserably. Chapter 36-27. Not long after, Tao Yongxing received replies from various factions. After reading the replies, his expression was a little complicated. It was just as he had guessed. After the 4 domain lords received his message, they all agreed without hesitation. Especially Clear Sky Domain Lord and Ganyang Domain Lord, they agreed without even asking about the reward and conditions. After all, the star-devouring grotto heaven was in Clear Sky Domain, and Ganyang Domain was next door. These 2 domain lords were more familiar with the Taotai clan, and they had to rely on the Taotai clan and Xianxia clan to be able to sit firmly in their positions. Tao Yongxing personally sent a message to ask for their help. How could they dare to refuse? The other 2 domain lords mentioned the reward and asked about Long Tian's basic situation. But they did not hesitate and agreed immediately, giving Tao Yongxing face. Only the Xianxia clan was very difficult to deal with. The Xianxia clan leader did not agree to Tao Yongxing's request, nor did he refuse directly. Instead he patiently asked who he wanted to kill. What was that person's appearance and characteristics? What was his cultivation level? What bloodline was he from? What divine weapon did he use? What special abilities and talents did he have? Why did that person become enemies with the Taotai clan? What happened before? The Taotai clan had many experts. How could they need help? There must be something strange about this, right? In short, the Xianxia clan leader was very suspicious, and his questions were very detailed. Everything he said revealed a message. He had to pay more. Tao Yongxing patiently explained the basic situation of Long Tian and the things that had happened before. Of course, he skimmed over all the embarrassing and humiliating matters of the Taotai clan so as to avoid being ridiculed by Patriarch Xianxia. As expected, the Xianxia patriarch pondered for a long time before replying to him. He could help with this, but he proposed a huge reward and added 2 conditions that gave Tao Yongxing a headache. First, Tao Yongxing had to take out 300 billion worth of ore. Second, the Taotai clan had to give the Xianxia clan a star stone vein every 100 years. Then the Taotai clan had to withdraw 50% of their properties in Ganyang domain and give them to the Xianxia clan. It was really an exorbitant demand. After Tao Yongxing finished reading the jade slip, he was so angry that he directly crushed the jade slip into pieces. He almost cursed out loud. "Despicable and shameless bastard, why don't you just rob me?" Tao Yongxing roared furiously. His face was distorted with anger. The high priest and Tao Yongxing were very nervous. They waited until his anger had mostly dissipated before carefully asking for the reason. When they heard the Xianxia clan leader's conditions, the 2 of them were filled with anger and cursed. "Damned beast." Peng Fei was stunned and asked in astonishment, "Senior, how did you know that I am a disciple of the 9 mystical caves heaven?" Xianxia smiled and said, "Is it that hard to guess? The Dragon Realm has a total of 33 caves heaven, and the Astral Source continent has 9. Among these 9 caves heaven, only the 9 mystical caves heaven is the Golden Rock race's nest. The Golden Rock race's bloodline is thin, and they are not as good at reproduction as the other demon races. Thus, the Golden Rock race treasures their bloodline the most, and almost no descendants are left outside. Even if there is a Golden Rock bloodline outside, once the Golden Rock race finds out, they will think of a way to find it. This. Peng Fei was a little stunned. He scratched his head and asked, Senior, you know so much about my race. Do you have some relationship with my race? Ji Tianxing smiled and said playfully, I don't have any relationship with the Golden Rock race, but I have a good relationship with the Dragon Kings and Dragon Emperors of the 4 seas and 5 continents. Of course, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor of the Astral Source continent is an exception. Peng Fei was stunned. He asked, So, you plan to leave the Astral Source continent and go to other continents? Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, I do plan to do so, but before I leave the Astral Source continent, I want to go to a place. Where? Peng Fei asked instinctively. The 9 mystical caves heaven, Ji Tianxing answered. Ah. Peng Fei's expression changed instantly. He begged with a bitter face, Senior, please don't send me back. Although I know that I am weak and can't help you, I will always be a burden to you. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and explained, I am not going to the 9 mystical caves heaven to send you back. I am going to find your Golden Rock patriarch or tribe leader. Find our patriarch or tribe leader. Peng Fei was even more confused. Yes. Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a low voice, I am going to ask them for information and verify something. Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 3630. After dealing with the 6 mines, Ji Tianxing looked into the interspatial ring for the last spoils of war. 2 lotus-like flowers with 9 petals the size of a wash basin. A high-grade king-level treasure, star-devouring flower. Although there were only 2 divine flowers, their value was immeasurable. In the current dragon realm, even if someone offered 100 billion divine stones for 1 flower, they might not be able to buy it. It was not that the flower was really valuable but that it was too rare and precious. According to Ji Tianxing's knowledge, in the entire dragon realm, only the star-devouring grotto heaven and a few ancient forbidden grounds had produced star-devouring flowers. Therefore, before he went to the star-devouring grotto heaven, he was thinking about the star-devouring flower. Only the barbarians of the Taotai clan who were not good at refining weapons or pills would not care about the star-devouring flower. As a result, Ji Tianxing easily plucked 2 flowers while escaping. If it were those god clans in the god realm, they would have sent troops to guard the star-devouring flower long before it sprouted. Ji Tianxing held the 2 star-devouring flowers in his hands and temporarily fell into hesitation and consideration. Should I directly use the devouring divine ability to swallow and refine these 2 divine flowers? Or should I spend a lot of time and effort to refine them into the 9 revolution star rhyme pill before consuming them? Swallowing and refining directly was simple and straightforward and saved time. Although his devouring divine ability was very powerful and could not waste the divine flower's medicinal power, doing so would only allow the divine flowers to unleash 80% of their effects. Refining the 9 revolution star rhyme pill was tedious and time-consuming, but it could allow the divine flowers to unleash 120% of their effects. Ji Tianxing calculated for a while and finally chose the latter. Forget it, the star-devouring flower is something that can only be chanced upon and not sought. It will probably be very difficult to obtain it in the future. I can't waste it recklessly. I'll just spend 2 to 3 years refining it into the 9 revolution star rhyme pill. Therefore he began to rummage through the interspatial ring, searching for all kinds of supplementary materials and herbs needed to refine the pill. The 9 revolutions star rhyme pill was a high-grade king-level divine pill. Most high-grade divine kings might not even know how to refine it. Firstly, the refining method was too mysterious and complicated. Secondly, it required too many materials. 17 types of herbs and 9 types of supplementary materials. In addition to the main ingredient, the star-devouring flower, there were a total of 27 materials to refine the 9 revolutions star rhyme pill. Chapter 3632. The Hall of Blood Slaughter is here. Black Sword ahead. Stop. When the burial of heaven was still 3,000 miles away from the Hall of Blood Slaughter elites, the 18 blood armor divine lords shouted in unison. Their cold and austere voices were truly awe-inspiring. Unfortunately, it was of no use. It could not temporarily increase their strength, nor could it slow down the burial of heaven. Whoosh, whoosh whoosh. On the contrary, the burial of heaven sped up. It was like a bolt of black lightning stabbing straight at one of the blood armor divine lords. The burial of heaven was very fast. Only a high god king could compare to it. As for these high divine lord realm blood slaughter hall elites, they were basically unable to clearly see the trajectory of the heaven-burying sword. All they could do was shout, "Be careful," and counterattack with their weapons. Of course it was all in vain. Bam! The burial of heaven easily pierced through the forehead of the first hall of blood slaughter elite, instantly shattering his godhead and causing a spray of blood. Then the burial of heaven pierced through his head. It streaked across the sky like a bolt of black lightning, accurately stabbing into the second hall of blood slaughter elite. It still hit him in the forehead, pierced his brain and shattered his godhead. It was an instant kill. The burial of heaven pierced through the back of the second person's head and attacked the third hall of blood slaughter elite. The same scene played out once more. Then the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. Muffled sounds rang out one after another, accompanied by streaks of blood blooming in the sky. The heaven-burier sword was like a death curse, instantly taking the lives of 9 elites of the Hall of Bloody Slaughter. All of them were killed in one strike as fast as the aurora. The 9 blood slaughter hall elites who were instantly killed all had huge bloody holes in their foreheads, but their corpses were still in good condition. Then they fell from the sky at high speed. If it were any other time, these high divine lord realm blood slaughter hall elites were all powerhouses whose names shook a region in the Ganyang region. No matter which divine nation they were in, they would be respected figures like divine generals, marshals and imperial preceptors. However, under burial of heaven's sword he didn't even have the chance to escape and was instantly killed. The other 9 elites of the blood slaughter hall were lucky enough to survive because they were relatively far away. After all, the 18 elites had spread out and formed a long line of defense. No matter how fast the burial of heaven's sword was, it still took a breath's time to kill 9 elites in a row. Witnessing this scene with their own eyes, the 9 elites of the blood slaughter hall who were scared out of their wits no longer dared to brandish their weapons and attack. The soft armor he wore, the divine sword he held, and the specially made robe were all shattered and twisted. Countless fragments fell from the sky. Only the interspatial ring was the least damaged. It was still intact and fell from the sky. Before the fragments fell from the sky, the vice-domain lord of Ganyang region and the 8th elder of the Xianxia tribe 30,000 miles away sensed something unusual and turned their heads to look at the scene of the incident. When they saw the vice-domain lord of Ganyang region explode and shatter into pieces, their eyes widened and their faces were filled with shock. Damn bastard. How dare he launch a sneak attack? And he killed him in one move. Even if he was slightly weaker, he was still a 5th-level divine king. How could he be killed in one move before he could warn or escape? These thoughts flashed through their minds at the same time. They were both very shocked. In the next moment, the 2 divine kings realized what had happened. They immediately felt scared and became very vigilant. Since that kid had launched a sneak attack and killed a divine king, it was very likely that one of them would be next. Almost at the same time when the 2 of them had this thought, behind the 8th elder, a figure silently appeared. He was wearing a white robe and was tall and sturdy. There was a dragon horn on his forehead and golden dragon scales on the surface of his body. There was no doubt that it was Zhou Xian. The 8th elder was only a god king in the 6th degree realm. In terms of strength and realm he was slightly higher than Zhou Xian. But in terms of combat power, even 10 of him would not be enough to kill Zhou Xian. Swoosh. Zhou Xian appeared in a flash and stabbed with his sword again. He quickly disappeared and returned to heaven and earth. He was very confident in this sword and did not give the 8th elder a chance to counterattack or dodge. The reason why he appeared for a moment and hid in heaven and earth after stabbing with his sword was that he did not want to expose more information and let the other divine kings see through him. Chapter 36-35. 3 godly kings were killed in a row, all in one move. The 4 godly kings who rushed over to help all witnessed the process of Domain Lord Ganyang's death with their consciousness. While they were shocked by Long Tian's strength and methods, they also understood one thing. Long Tian was ruthless. Even if Domain Lord Ganyang admitted defeat and fled, even if he gave up his dignity and begged for mercy, he still couldn't escape death. This meant that he would not let go of anyone who participated in this assassination plan and attempted to kill Long Tian. The pressure on the four godly kings immediately increased. They felt a chill run down their backs and their eyes became extremely solemn. It seems that today will be the end of a fight to the death. There's no possibility of reconciliation. That kid disappeared again. I think I know what his invisibility is all about. Oh? Tell me, how did he do it? The four godly kings quickly gathered and rushed to the place where Domain Lord Ganyang was killed when they were thousands of miles away. Along the way, the godly kings communicated with each other through voice transmission. Xianxia clan's 7th elder's words piqued the interest of 6th elder, Clear Sky Domain Lord and Deputy Domain Lord. They were full of anticipation. 7th elder frowned and thought for a moment. Then he said to everyone in a low and cautious voice, "We searched everywhere within 100,000 miles and even the alternate dimensions, but we couldn't find him. However, his aura is everywhere." What does this mean? It means that he's in this world, but he's in a different way. That's why we can't find him. Clearsky Domain Master was a very qualified supporting actor. She hurriedly asked, "7th Elder, in what way does he exist?" 7th Elder pointed at the ground under his feet and said meaningfully, "We searched the sky, the earth, and the alternate dimensions, but we missed one thing. Perhaps the land within a radius of 100,000 miles was transformed by him?" His words awakened the dreamer. The other three were shocked and then showed complicated expressions. 6th Elder didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He muttered with a stifled expression, "Even if he used Earth-type abilities, it's very difficult to do that, right? Moreover, the battle just now destroyed everything within a radius of 20 to 30,000 miles. If he really transformed into the Earth, wouldn't he have been seriously injured?" The Clear Sky Territory Master revealed a look of sudden realization and nodded repeatedly. 7th Elder is wise. This is very likely the truth. The position of the Deputy Region Master was slightly lower, so he was not in a position to play the supporting role. He did not have the guts to question him, so he could only reveal a thoughtful expression. Chapter 36:36. When Ji Tianxing appeared out of thin air and attacked from behind, the left protector was overjoyed. "Ha! I was looking for you everywhere. I didn't expect you to walk right into my trap." The left protector received a message from the 6th elder and knew that Ji Tianxing had already killed 3 god kings. Therefore, when the space behind him rippled and a dazzling sword light lit up, he didn't even need to turn around to know that Ji Tianxing had attacked. His face was filled with mockery as he sneered. He took the opportunity to use his ultimate skill and slashed his sword behind him. Hellfire explosion. The left protector roared angrily as his body swelled up. His entire body lit up with a blood-red light. He held a blood-red heavy sword that was more than 10 feet long with both hands and swung it forward. In an instant, boundless hellfire explosions surged out from the heavy sword that was as wide as a bench and covered the sky. Everything within tens of thousands of miles was lit up by the dazzling fire. With the left protector as the center, everything within tens of thousands of miles around him became the domain of hellfire explosion. The dark purple sea of fire surged as if it could burn everything in the world. Bam, 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 bam. The dazzling golden sword light that was more than 1,000 feet long collided with the hellfire explosion that was more than 10,000 feet long. An earth-shattering boom erupted. The left protector was very confident in his ultimate skill. However, the result caused him to be filled with shock, and he revealed an expression as if he had seen a ghost. The hellfire explosion that was more than 10,000 feet long was actually shattered into pieces by the golden sword light and exploded in all directions. However, the power of the golden sword light didn't weaken much as it continued to slash toward him. Bang! The left protector frowned and shouted coldly. He held the blood-red heavy sword in front of him with both hands. The wide heavy sword that was more than 10 feet long emitted an endless amount of blood-red light that turned into a thick and solid divine light barrier. Bam! The huge golden sword and the divine light barrier collided and exploded with a dull boom. Then both of them collapsed at the same time and exploded into millions of divine light fragments. Crack! Along with the crisp sound of the explosion, the terrifying impact sent the left protector flying backward. He tumbled high up in the sky, his face twisted and ferocious, purple divine blood spurting out from his mouth and nose. Only after flying for more than 200 miles did he manage to neutralize the terrifying impact and stabilize himself. Damn it! That kid's strength is actually so strong? The left protector hurriedly circulated his martial arts to regulate his breathing and suppress the injuries of his internal organs. His face was full of fear as he let out a low cry. Previously, when the clan leader assigned him to carry out this mission, he did not tell him that this dragon clan youth's strength was so terrifying. If he had known this would happen, he would not have underestimated the enemy and brought only 3 elders with him. Before they set off, he and the other elders were still discussing and mocking the Taotai clan for being trash who couldn't even kill a young man from the dragon clan. Now he finally understood the reason. However, he wasn't happy at all. He even regretted it. Just as these thoughts flashed through the left protector's mind, she had already lost track of Ji Tianxing in the surging hellfire sea. In the next moment he appeared behind the left protector and brandished his sword to use his ultimate killing move. Sword of Destruction. Ji Tianxing shouted coldly. His left hand formed a sword sign and his right hand held the Burial of Heaven sword. He stabbed with all his might. He had absorbed 2 portions of the world power and released it through the amplification of his sword principle superpower. Suddenly, a dazzling golden sword that was as long as 1,000 feet engulfed the left protector's body. The left protector's eyes widened. He was filled with fear and despair. He had tried to teleport to escape and he had also thought of teleporting to dodge, but it was useless. When the golden sword radiance appeared, the area within a radius of 10,000 miles was sealed by an invisible power of the rules of nature. Even if he used all his strength, he couldn't break free from the restraint of space. He couldn't escape or dodge at all. He could only choose to block and take the blow head-on. My life is over. The left protector exclaimed in his heart. He held the blood-red sword with both hands and slashed with all his strength. Ancient sky-splitting slash. The left protector roared. The blood-red sword in his hand burned like lava and became crystal clear. It released a crescent-shaped sword radiance that was 10,000 feet long. This sword strike similarly contained his lifetime's worth of divine energy and over 200 types of divine Tao laws. This was his trump card, one of his strongest killing moves. Kaboom! The 2 sword radiances, one golden and one red, clashed together with a loud sound that shook the sky. The blood-red sword radiance that was 10,000 feet long was cut in half by the golden sword. It shattered into dozens of pieces and scattered in the sky. Meanwhile, the golden sword of destruction didn't slow down at all. It struck the left protector again. Crack. Compared to the collision of the 2 sword radiances, this sound was insignificant. The left custodian's protective godly light, his armor and his indestructible godly body instantly shattered like ice or mirrors. His body exploded into pieces on the spot, mixing with the purple rain of blood. Pieces of armor and robes splashed down from the sky. Only his godhead was preserved. He took advantage of the chaos to escape through the rain of blood and fled north in panic. The destruction of the god body was, of course, a terrible wound and ending. However, if he could preserve his godhead, there was still a chance for him to rise again. Therefore, the left protector didn't waste any time to threaten or care about the other 4 divine kings. There was only one word in his mind. Run. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing was able to destroy his divine body in 2 moves, so how could he possibly allow his divine core to escape? I went to such great lengths just to obtain your godhead. If I let your godhead escape, wouldn't I have suffered a great loss? The left protector's godhead had just fled 8,000 miles when Ji Tianxing's cold laughter sounded beside it. He was instantly peerlessly terrified. His godhead trembled and he let out a sorrowful and indignant roar. Get lost. If you kill all of us, the Xianxia tribe won't forgive you. As he roared, the left protector didn't hesitate to use 5,000 years of power and burn more than 40 types of divine Tao laws to use a forbidden divine ability. Instantly, his godhead ignited with a bloody flame, and his divine power aura increased by 5 times. His escape speed increased several times, reaching the speed of light as he fled north. Normally, when god monarchs flew, they were said to be as fast as lightning or as fast as the aurora, but that was only to describe their speed. However, the left protector's situation was different. He had truly reached the speed of light. To be honest, this speed was extremely terrifying. Even if Ji Tianxing unleashed all his power and used all his trump cards, he wouldn't be able to reach the speed of light. In the next instant he would be left behind by the left protector, and then he wouldn't be able to catch up. See, the left protector's desire to live was so strong. He erupted with a speed that even he couldn't believe. At the same time he had reached his limit. Although this power and speed could only last for an instant, it was enough for him to escape hundreds of thousands of miles. Chapter 36-37. The Left Guardian had paid a terrible price. This forbidden ability not only consumed 5,000 years of his cultivation, it also burned 40 over types of God Tao laws. The most important thing was that after casting the technique his power would weaken until he fainted. But to be able to escape from Long Tian's evil clutches and successfully survive, it was worth it no matter what price he had to pay. That was what the Left Protector thought when she fled at the speed of light. However, his thoughts had yet to end when a scene that made him lose all hope appeared. The sky around the Godhead had unknowingly started to distort and fold. What was more terrifying was that in the distorted sky, a dazzling white light appeared and actually formed a blazing white wall with a radius of 100,000 miles. That was a forcefully condensed space barrier using space laws. This was too much. Bam! Without a doubt, the Left Guardian's Godhead crashed fiercely against the blazing white wall. A muffled sound exploded and reverberated through the sky. The blazing white space barrier also shook violently from his collision and exploded with intense space fluctuations. The speed of the Left Guardian's Godhead was too fast. That was the speed of light. But he crashed against the space barrier at the speed of light. The result was obvious. Kacha kacha. His Godhead was smashed into pieces and numerous cracks appeared on its surface. Suffering such a heavy injury, the Left Guardian's consciousness became hazy and he gradually fell into a coma. Before he fell into a coma, his heart was filled with unwillingness and there was only one thought in his mind. Why did it turn out like this? He had obviously paid a huge price and sacrifice to reach the speed of light which only peak God Kings could reach, so why did he still fail? The space within a radius of 100,000 miles was sealed and solidified, and even forcefully formed into a space barrier? Could it be that Long Tian's control of space laws had reached such a terrifying level? Then the Left Guardian's consciousness fell into darkness and he completely fell into a coma. Swoosh. The blood-red Godhead, which was full of cracks, dimmed and fell from the sky. At this moment, Zhi Tianxing used the Turbid Heaven secret skill to move close to 100,000 miles and rush to the side of the Godhead. He waved his hand and the cracked Godhead entered his hand. You're a Xianxia clan senior after all. Even if you're only in the 8th stage realm, you can't be underestimated. Luckily I had a trick up my sleeve. You almost got away. Zhi Tianxing looked at the Godhead in his hand and muttered to himself. After this battle he also clearly understood the extent of his combat strength. He should be at the peak of the 8th heaven of King God realm. God Kings below the 8th level were basically insta-killed. Even an ordinary 8th stage realm God King could be easily killed. As for veteran God Kings like the Left Protector, they possessed great heritage and many trump cards. It would take some effort to slay them. Even if he met a 9th stage realm God King, he should be able to maintain an undefeated record, right? At least he wouldn't be injured by a 9th stage realm God King like in the past. Zhi Tianxing collected his thoughts and crushed the divinity of the Left Protector and put it into his spatial ring. Then he found the Left Protector's spatial ring and put it into the ring as well. After doing all this he glanced at the sky in the south. With a wave of his hand he removed the spatial barrier within a radius of 100,000 miles. His figure returned to heaven and earth. 100,000 kilometers to the south. The 6th Elder, the 7th Elder, the Clear Sky Region Ruler, and the Vice Region Ruler were all rushing forward excitedly. Earlier they saw a blood ray and fire ray soaring into the sky in the northern sky. It should be the battle between the Left Protector and Long Tian. They rushed over as fast as they could to provide support, but they discovered something strange on the way. The location where the blood ray and sword ray appeared was actually moving towards the north. This meant that one of them was fleeing while the other was chasing after them. The 4 God Kings immediately concluded that Long Tian was escaping in a sorry state and the Left Protector was chasing after him. Other than this result, there was absolutely no other possibility. After all, the Left Protector's skills were profound and he was powerful with many tricks up his sleeves. They must hurry over and assist the Left Protector to kill Long Tian so that they could gain some credit. If they were late they could only clean up the battlefield. As a result, the 4 God Kings rushed over as fast as they could as they let down their guard and forgot to maintain their formation. The 4 of them had different abilities, so the speed at which they rushed over was different. 6th Elder and 7th Elder had the strongest abilities, so they flew at the front. The second strongest was Clear Sky Domain Master, who was 5,000 miles behind them. Deputy Clear Sky Domain Master, who was the weakest, was at the back of the group and was 8,000 miles away from Clear Sky Domain Master. After Ji Tianxing returned to heaven and earth, he transformed into a 200,000-mile world. Everything in this area was under his watch and supervision. Seeing the 4 God Kings' postures and expressions, he immediately understood what was going on. Hee. They probably think the left protector is chasing after me and want to gain some credit and benefits? He sneered in his heart and teleported 50,000 miles, appearing behind 6th Elder and 7th Elder out of thin air. Absolute shadows of the 10 directions. In order to end the battle quickly, Ji Tianxing shouted coldly and used his trump card. Golden light flickered all over his body as 5 figures appeared in the sky around him. They were all identical to him. The 6 heavenly dragons were all handsome and mighty. They wielded the Heaven Barrier Sword, but they executed different Supreme Sword techniques. 7-Star Sword, Heaven Cleaving Sword, Heaven Piercing Sword, Heavenly Dragon Proud Slash. The 6 long Tians were scattered in the sky, forming an encirclement of 20,000 miles. This encirclement was neither big nor small, just enough to envelop 6th Elder, 7th Elder, Clear Sky Domain Master and Deputy Domain Master. Immediately after, dozens of dazzling sword lights with supreme divine might rain down like floodwaters and drown the 4 God Kings. The 4 God Kings were imagining how the left protector would trample on Long Tian and how Long Tian would be beaten up miserably. How could they guard against the sudden appearance of 6 Long Tians and the incomparably valiant attacks? This was not a sneak attack at all. It was a completely open encirclement. No, this was not the main point. Long Tian? How is he still alive? This is impossible. Wasn't he being chased by the left protector and his life was at stake? Long Tian is actually safe and sound and there are 6 of him? Our eyes must be playing tricks on us. We must be hallucinating. Could it be that the left protector has already died? When the sword lights descended, the 4 God Kings were dumbfounded. They looked terrified and hopeless. The next moment, the sword lights drowned their figures. Bam, 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 boom, 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 kaboom, kaboom. A wave of earth-shattering, deafening, and heaven-shaking explosions resounded endlessly in the heavens and the earth. Divine light flashed. In the chaotic sky, the 4 God Kings were cut into pieces on the spot. Not even their corpses were left. Their bodies were minced into pieces. Blood rained down from the sky along with fragments of divine weapons and armor. As for their godheads, they were also chopped into pieces and scattered all over the ruined land. After a short while, peace was restored. The interception plan had come to an end. Chapter 36-38. After leaving the battlefield, Ji Tianxing continued to head north. Next, he had to cross the Ganyang region and another 8 regions before reaching the northern border of the Star Source continent. At that time, he would head to the Golden Rock Clan's 9 mystical paradise to pay a visit to the Golden Rock Old Ancestor. Swoosh. The burial of Heaven's sword was still speeding through the clouds while Ji Tianxing stayed in the sword world and entered the divine pagoda to deal with the spoils of war. The battle just now sounded very long, but it actually only took a quarter of an hour. Ji Tianxing had killed 8 God King powerhouses and instantly killed 18 God Lord realm elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall. His harvest was bountiful. Those God Monarch realm elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall had nothing to say. Ji Tianxing didn't care about their godhead fragments. After all, even if he spent time refining them, he wouldn't obtain many God Dao laws and couldn't absorb much God power. There was no other way. He was already a peak 5th degree God King. Only the Godhead shards of Middle God Kings and High God Kings were effective against him. Even if it was a lower Divine King's Divine Spark fragment, the effect it could have was also limited. It was better than nothing. In the distorted space, Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged under the blood flame sacred tree and began to count the spoils of war. First was the interspatial rings of the 18 Blood Slaughter Hall elites. These experts were all elites of the Xianxia clan. Although they weren't too rich, they were still much richer than ordinary upper god kings. Ji Tianxing sorted out the cultivation resources in the 18 rings and put them all into his own interspatial ring. Roughly estimating, he obtained about 200 billion god stones worth of resources. Of course, there weren't any king-grade god artifacts or resources. Most of them were god monarch grade. Ji Tianxing put the 200 billion god stones aside for Wushuang, Bai Long, Hei Long, Qian Yu, Lin Shui and others. Then he began to check the interspatial rings of the 8 god kings. These god king experts were either elders of the Xianxia clan or domain lords of the Clear Sky and Ganyang regions. Basically, they were all people with great power and authority. Their wealth naturally far exceeded ordinary god kings. Ji Tianxing spent half a day to organize the 8 spatial rings. He had obtained a huge amount of cultivation resources, a large number of king-grade materials, pills, divine artifacts and treasures. The value of these resources was hard to estimate. But a conservative estimate would put the combined wealth of the 8 godly kings at close to 2 trillion. In addition to the resources and wealth in his interspatial ring, his current wealth was close to 3 trillion. As the saying goes, a horse won't get fat without feeding at night, and a man won't get rich without a windfall. With this windfall, it's enough for me to cultivate to the high-level God King realm and support everyone to cultivate to the God King realm. Ji Tianxing put away the interspatial ring and revealed a satisfied smile. With a large amount of king-grade treasures and resources, he could push Wushuang, White Dragon, Lin Shui and the others to the King God realm. Moreover, these people's talents and aptitudes were originally 1 in a million geniuses. In addition, it was worth mentioning that he had obtained many king-grade materials for forging weapons, refining pills, and setting up formations from the space rings of the 8 divine kings. Fortunately, among these materials, there were herbs that he urgently needed to refine the 9-turn stellar elixir. Now he had the Star Eater flower, 9 sets of supplementary materials and 17 sets of herbs. He could finally start refining the 9-turn stellar elixir. However, Ji Tianxing was not in a hurry to refine the elixir. First he meditated for a while. When his divine power and mental state had recovered, he took out the godhead fragments of the 8 godly kings. I'll refine their godheads first, then focus on refining the 9-turn stellar elixir. If I can successfully break through to the 6th level of the divine king realm, the success rate of refining the 9-turn stellar elixir should be 95%. After all, the 9-turn stellar elixir was a high-grade king-grade divine elixir. It was the rarest and most precious type. Moreover, the refining method was extremely complicated. The energy and mental energy consumed was several times more than other similar elixirs. It was difficult for an ordinary high-level god king to refine it successfully. With Ji Tianxing's current strength, he only had an 80% chance of success. As the materials were hard to find, he did not want to take the risk. He would rather raise his strength first. Swoosh. Soon he grabbed a handful of godhead fragments in each hand and used the engulfing divine power to refine them. White light appeared in his palms and formed a white light vortex. It gradually devoured the energy of the godhead fragments. Dazzling 5 colors divine light surged out of the godhead fragments and was absorbed into his body. Next he used the power of the heaven-mending orb to refine the 5 colors divine light. When the 5 colors divine light turned into pure divine power, he would truly absorb it for his own use. It had only been 4 hours since Ji Tianxing killed the 8 godly kings. At this moment, in the star cloud city of the Xianxia tribe in the Nebula Cave, in a dazzling gray palace filled with the vicissitudes of ancient times, the guardian spirit who was in charge of guarding the spirit temple rushed into the main hall with a pale face. Tribe leader, something bad has happened. Stumbling into the great hall, the spirit protector cried out sorrowfully before he even saw the Xianxia clan leader. The dozen or so guards who were guarding the hall all looked at each other. They frowned at the same time and revealed doubtful expressions. In their eyes, the guardian spirit guarding the spirit temple was a very leisurely job. He basically did not show his face. Even if something happened, it had nothing to do with the spirit temple. How could the spirit protector be like this? What in the world happened? Soon, the guard captain stopped the guardian spirit and asked about the situation. What's the commotion? Be careful of your head if you disturb the Lord's cultivation. The guard captain angrily glared at the spirit protector and coldly shouted in an unfriendly tone. The guardian spirit did not have a high status and did not have any real power. No one was afraid of him. The spirit protector took a few deep breaths and said with a pale face, "Quickly take me to see the patriarch. I have an important matter to report." Something important? Could it be that the sky has fallen? The guard captain sneered disapprovingly. However, he still brought the guardian spirit to the Xianxia tribe leader's study. Not long later, the guardian spirit saw the Xianxia tribe leader resting with his eyes closed in the messy and old study. The Xianxia tribe leader had a rough personality. He did not like reading, nor did he like music, chess, calligraphy, or painting. The study in the palace was just for decoration. He usually slept in the study with his eyes closed. Who knew how many precious ancient books he used as a pillow? The Xianxia tribe leader was woken up by the guardian spirit and frowned unhappily. He asked sternly, "What's made you so flustered? Has your ancestral grave been dug up?" The spirit protector took a deep breath and suppressed the panic and anxiety in his heart. After his aura stabilized, he bowed and reported in a low voice, "Patriarch, the soul spirit tablets of the left custodian, the 6th elder, the 7th elder, and the 8th elder are all broken." "What?" The Xianxia tribe leader's eyes widened and he jumped up from his chair. Chapter 36-39. The left guardian and the 3 elders' divine spirit tablets are all broken? Xianxia, the leader of the Xianxia clan, glared at the spirit protector and roared with a twisted face. An invisible pressure burst out from his body and enveloped half of the palace. Immediately, the spirit protector was intimidated by the powerful divine aura and fell to the ground with a plop, his body trembling uncontrollably. Even the guards around the study were shrouded by the terrifying pressure and knelt on one knee, not daring to raise their heads. Xianxia's roar was so loud that half of the palace heard it. At the same time, everyone understood what it meant for the divine spirit tablets to be broken. Every member of the Xianxia clan had a divine spirit tablet, which was kept in the spirit temple and guarded by the spirit protector. No matter where the Xianxia clan was, once they died, the corresponding divine spirit tablet would be broken. The reason for this was that the Xianxia clan's bloodline was thin and there were only close to 10,000 of them. To the leader of the Xianxia clan, the life of every member was very important. But now, the powerful left guardian and the 3 elders had died at the same time. This news was no less than a bolt from the blue. There was dead silence in the study. After a long time, Xianxia came back to his senses. He frowned and asked fiercely, "When did this happen?" The spirit protector trembled on the ground and replied with a trembling voice, "4 hours ago, bastard. Why did you only report what happened 4 hours ago now?" Xianxia roared furiously and raised his foot to kick the spirit protector. The spirit protector was kicked and rolled a dozen times. He crashed into the wall and rolled in the ruins, blood spurting out of his mouth and nose. But he didn't dare to heal himself. He quickly climbed out of the ruins and returned to Xianxia. Blood flowed out of his mouth and he replied in a hoarse voice, "Leader, please calm down. This is too shocking. I wasn't sure, so I used a spell to check several times. At the same time, there were 18 divine spirit tablets broken. All of them were elites of the blood slaughter hall." One could imagine how dumbfounded the spirit protector had been 4 hours ago when he saw the 22 spirit tablets shatter. This kind of thing had not happened for hundreds of years. It was as if there was something wrong with the spirit tablet. He was filled with fear. He didn't dare to be sure and he didn't dare to report the news himself. He could only cast the spell over and over again, using various methods to check the spirit tablet to see if there were any mistakes. The study fell into dead silence again. Xianxia slumped into a chair with a dejected look. His face was as cold as ice and his hands could not stop trembling. Every Xianxia clansman's life was very important to him. It was related to the Xianxia clan's prosperity and the hope of unifying the Star Source continent. But now 22 of them had died. Furthermore, the left protector and the 3 elders were also among them. They were the cornerstones of the Xianxia clan, the most powerful warriors. After a long time, Xianxia waved his hand and coldly shouted, "Scram!" As if he had been granted amnesty, the spirit protector hurriedly bowed and left the study, leaving as if he was fleeing. "Damn Tao Yongxing. Could it be that you're willing to pay such a huge price for my help? You've offended a powerful being from the Dragon Clan, yet you've made my clan pay such a huge price. If I don't make you vomit blood this time, how can I be satisfied?" Xianxia cursed with a ferocious expression, his entire body surging with murderous intent. It was only now that he realized how powerful the powerful being from the Dragon Clan that Tao Yongxing was chasing was. Although he really wanted to bring the right protector and a few elders to kill Long Tian personally to avenge the left protector and the rest, the Xianxia clan had already paid such a huge price. However, the Xianxia clan had already paid such a heavy price. He was not willing to sacrifice a few more elders. Even if he wanted to kill Long Tian to avenge the left protector and the rest, he had to consider it at length. He would not take the lead again. He had to let the powerful beings from the Taotai clan be the cannon fodder. Hence, he calmed down and thought for a long time before taking out a communication jade slip and sending a message to Tao Yongxing. In the northwest of the Clear Sky region, 5 million miles away from the border. In a certain city, the Taotai clan leader Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and Tao Yuxing were resting in a house. Of course, godly king experts like them did not need to rest even if they had to travel continuously for 10 days. The main reason they stopped here was to wait for the other two elders. In the past few days, the three of them had been shaken off by Ji Tianxing and chased in the wrong direction. However, Tao Yongxing had detected Ji Tianxing's location in time and asked the two territorial lords and the Xianxia clan's godly king to help kill him. Then they also changed direction and rushed towards the northwest, wanting to meet up with the powerful beings from the Xianxia clan. At this time, the chaotic situation in the Taotai clan had already calmed down. The two elders were left in the star-devouring cave to lead the clan members to rebuild their homes and heal their injuries. The other two elders rushed to this city through the teleportation formation to meet up with them. The high priest held a teacup in his hand, but he was not in the mood to drink tea. He kept spinning the teacup and muttered to himself, "The two elders should arrive within 15 minutes. The high priest was stunned for a moment. He asked in disbelief, "Xianxia is going to do it himself?" Tao Yongxing nodded and said expressionlessly, "That's right. He wanted to avenge the dead protectors and elders. However, he added two conditions. Firstly, he wants to double the conditions we agreed on. Secondly, he wants Long Tian's corpse and godhood." Tao Yuxing frowned and said somewhat angrily, "Does that mean that Long Tian's dragon tribe bloodline belongs to Xianxia?" Tao Yongxing said in a deep voice, "The dragon bloodline belongs to him. The phoenix bloodline and the golden rock bloodline belong to me." The high priest and Tao Yuxing fell silent. Even though this deal was a huge loss no matter how one looked at it. However, this was something that could not be helped. For the dignity of the Taotai clan, they had to do it no matter what. The burial of Heaven's sword already flew continuously for an entire day. While Ji Tianxing just happened to be in closed seclusion cultivation for 50 days in the distorted spacetime. The 8 divine kings' godhood fragments were all devoured and refined by him. Previously, he still thought that it required some kind of lucky chance and life-threatening danger before it could stimulate his potential and break through to the 6th-level divine king realm. He did not expect that after he refined 8 sets of godhood fragments and deprived 40 kinds of divine Tao laws, he broke through smoothly. After all, those 8 divine kings' strength was not ordinary. The quality of the godhood fragments was extremely high. Not only were there 5 middle-level divine kings, there were even 3 high-level divine kings. The most important thing was that there was a left protector with a deep foundation among them who had cultivated for over 20,000 years. He was an 8th-level realm divine king. Now, not only did Ji Tianxing reach the 6th-level divine king realm, his strength increased by more than 6 times. The divine Tao laws that he grasped also reached as many as 580. Even if he faced a 9th-level realm divine king expert again, he could also put up a fight and be more relaxed. After he ended his cultivation, Ji Tianxing opened his eyes and a gratified smile appeared on his lips. "I thought that I would need the 9-turn star rhyme pill to break through to the 6th-level divine king realm. I didn't expect it to be so smooth. This is all thanks to those few divine kings, especially the left protector of the Xianxia tribe. His power alone is comparable to that of 4 domain masters." Ji Tianxing calculated that he would save the 9-turn star rhyme pill for when he broke through to the upper-level divine king realm. After all, there was a huge bottleneck from the 6th-level divine king realm to the 7th-level divine king realm. If there was no major lucky chance, it would be very difficult to break through. According to the previous plan, Ji Tianxing would open the furnace to refine the 9-turn star rhyme pill after he finished his closed-door cultivation. However, he recalled something very important. Hence, he left the distorted spacetime and headed towards the 3rd level of the divine pagoda. Swoosh! A white light flashed and Ji Tianxing appeared in the cold and gloomy wasteland. His divine sense spread out and covered a radius of 70,000 miles. Very soon he found Baifeng. That was the center of the wasteland, and there was an oasis with a radius of 1,000 miles. There were mountains and rivers, and the scenery was very pleasant. Right above the oasis, there were 9 divine pearls floating in the sky, and they were shining with a dazzling golden light, illuminating the entire oasis. Whereas in the depths of the oasis, there was a majestic golden palace built on top of a lofty mountain that was 3,000 feet tall. The palace was surrounded by divine light and white clouds. There were also colorful birds and beasts. Not only were there spirit cranes, there were also various rare spirit birds. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing was slightly stunned, but he immediately understood something as a smile appeared on the corners of his lips. He flew across tens of thousands of miles in the sky and appeared outside that magnificent palace. Not long later, he saw Baifeng, who was circulating her energy to recuperate in a secret room in the palace. "Did you do all this?" Ji Tianxing looked at her and asked with a grin. Baifeng was a little wary and hurriedly explained, "This space is too dark and desolate. It's completely unsuitable for cultivation and recuperation. Therefore, I moved a portion of the mountains, rivers, and living beings from my inner world here. Only by living in a place like this can I be at ease and cultivate." Clearly, she was worried that Ji Tianxing would reprimand her and ask her to remove the mountains, rivers, and palaces. She was really unwilling to continue sitting in the cold and gloomy wasteland. That feeling was like being imprisoned and exiled. It was too shabby. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianxing did not reprimand her. Instead, he smiled and said, "You've cultivated an inner world? I didn't expect that you've also mastered the power of faith and raised an entire world's people?" Baifeng's expression was slightly awkward. She could only nod and did not explain further. Chapter 36-41. Before Ji Tianxing ascended to the God realm, he had told the people around him that there were many god monarchs and god kings in the god realm who cultivated the power of faith. Under normal circumstances, they would cultivate their inner worlds or use some kind of divine weapon to create a world. They would create countless living beings in that world, and all of them would worship them. They would use that to gather the power of faith. This method could quickly increase one's strength without wasting a lot of time and energy. Many god monarchs and god kings favored this method. However, in the eyes of many orthodox cultivators of the divine way, this was an unorthodox method. Therefore, god monarchs and god kings who cultivated the power of faith were in the minority. However, Ji Tianxing knew that this was also a type of divine way that had been passed down since ancient times. It could not be considered an unorthodox method. Although he did not have any prejudice against this method, he did not have any intention of acknowledging it or cultivating it. Otherwise, he would have used the power of faith in the sword world long ago and created countless living beings. As for the 5 elements world, on the surface, it seemed like billions of living beings were under his control and protection. However, in reality, he had only merged with the 5 elements world and did not make billions of living beings worship him. At this moment, Ji Tianxing mentioned the power of faith. Baifeng was worried that he would reprimand, obstruct, or deny it, so he hurriedly changed the topic. "Master, do you have any instructions for me?" Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said, "It's not really an instruction. I just want to ask you about something." "Ask me for advice?" Baifeng was stunned and looked at him with a strange expression. He was in disbelief. In his opinion, Ji Tianxing was almost invincible, omniscient, and omnipotent. How could he ask him for advice? "Don't look at me like that. I'm not omnipotent." Ji Tianxing saw through his thoughts and explained, "What I want to ask is the divination technique you are best at. Back in the boundless heaven continent, you helped those god envoys to find my location and traces." When this matter was mentioned, Baifeng immediately became spirited and explained excitedly, "The reason why I could find your location across a few regions is because of my divine eye of annihilation. This is the inherited talent of my race, and it happens to have this effect." Of course, using the divine eyes of annihilation to track a target wasn't something that could be used casually. Only by coming into contact with the target and planting a special divine aura in the target's body could the deduction be successful. If you want me to track down a complete stranger, I won't be able to do it. After listening, Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said thoughtfully, "In that case, Tao Yongxing was able to track my location and traces, most likely using a similar method. Previously when I fought with him he must have left some kind of special divine power or clue in my body. However, when I was recuperating and cultivating in seclusion, I checked many times and didn't find any trace of his divine power. Not only his divine power, but even the 4 divine powers of the Taotai clan were nowhere to be found. Bai Feng also frowned, and after pondering over it for a moment she spoke out in a grave tone. Tao Yongxing is a 9th-stage realm god king who has cultivated for over 20,000 years, and the depth of his cultivation and the profoundness of his methods are far above mine. But even so, his method of tracking you should be the same as mine. No matter if he used some kind of divine ability, innate talent inheritance or some kind of god relic, he must have left some clues in your body. Speaking of this, he paused for a moment and spoke out in a solemn tone. Lord, I feel that there's a possibility that the divine power which Tao Yongxing left in your body might be extremely special. Not only is it extremely concealed, it doesn't belong to the Taotai clan, nor does it belong to his own power. Ji Tianqing nodded his head and said, there's this possibility. Thank you for your analysis and reminder. I'll go back and do a thorough check. We must remove the clues which he left behind as soon as possible. Otherwise he might keep on chasing after us like a lingering spirit. Saying that, Ji Tianqing left the 3rd-story space. Bai Feng looked at his disappearing back view in the white light and a smile appeared on her face. After some time later he muttered to himself, previously I always thought that Kenshin was omniscient and omnipotent, high up in the air and could only be looked up to. I'd not expected that Kenshin would also have times when he couldn't understand. He's not much different from ordinary god kings like us. This is good. When I interact with him in the future I won't have to be on my guard or be on my guard. Unknowingly, Bai Feng's impression of Ji Tianqing had undergone a subtle change. In the past he'd always thought that Kenshin was high up in the air, cold and aloof. He could only be looked up to and could not be approached. However, now he realized that Kenshin was also human. There was no need to deliberately keep a distance when interacting with him. Thinking about it this way, he suddenly felt that being a guard for the sword god was not something that was unacceptable. Ji Tianqing returned to the distorted space and sat cross-legged under the blood-flame sacred tree. Thinking of Bai Feng's reaction just now, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Although I'm not good at tracking secret techniques, if Bai Feng can think of something, how can I not? In fact, he had already guessed the answer when he was cultivating in seclusion and breaking through to the 6th level of the God King realm. He had only used this as an excuse to intentionally interact with Bai Feng and let her see his flaws. He wasn't as perfect as she had imagined. This was the only way he could gradually eliminate the estrangement and wariness in Bai Feng's heart. Ji Tianqing knew very well that if he wanted to control an expert like Bai Feng, he would not be able to obtain her loyalty by merely using force and coercion. In his previous life, although he appeared cold on the surface, he was actually proficient in all kinds of controlling techniques. Otherwise, he would not have so many followers and establish such a huge force. To him, controlling Bai Feng was very easy and simple. Soon, he threw this small matter to the back of his mind and began to circulate his energy to inspect his body. Previously, when he was cultivating in seclusion, he had inspected his body many times. However, he did not find the 4 types of divine powers that the Taotai clan usually used. He also did not find Tao Yongxing's energy aura. Now that he had changed his mind, he began to inspect his body again. He did not let go of any trace of blood, flesh, tendons, bones, fingernails, or even hair on his head. As for his internal organs, sea of consciousness and Godhead, they were the focus of his inspection. Time passed quietly. A quarter of an hour, half an hour had passed. After 2 hours, he had inspected his body from inside out 10 times. He even checked every drop of blood in his body. In the end, he still did not find any abnormal energy or traces. I can confirm that there is nothing abnormal in my body. Then where are the traces and clues that Tao Yongxing left behind? Ji Tianqing frowned and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, he thought of something and his eyes lit up. He quickly left the distorted space and flew out of the sword world. He appeared at the top of the sea of clouds. Chapter 3642. Whoosh. It was noon and the sun was high in the sky. The heaven barrier sword was like a bolt of pitch-black lightning as it flew over a vast lake. Suddenly, Ji Tianqing flew out of the sword world and appeared beside it. Burial of heaven, stop for a moment. He spoke to buried heaven through divine telekinesis voice transmission. Burial of heaven didn't understand what was going on, so it quickly stopped and asked, "What's wrong?" Ji Tianxing reached out to hold the divine sword, glanced at the vast lake below and landed in the lake. Whoosh! He dove into the rippling lake and dove down to the bottom of the lake, creating a temporary cave at the bottom of the lake. After using 2 formations to seal the cave, he took out the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Pagoda and entered the distorted spacetime with the burial of heaven. After a while he returned to the blood flame sacred tree, holding the burial of heaven with both hands and carefully observing it. Burial of heaven, when I fought with Tao Yongxing and the others that day, were you injured? Burial of heaven realized that there was a problem, so it answered truthfully. Tao Yongxing and the few divine kings of the Taotai clan all used king-grade high-grade divine artifacts. Although the battle was very short, I was indeed injured. However, they were all minor injuries, so I didn't tell you. In these few days, I have been silently absorbing divine power to slowly heal my injuries. I should be fully recovered in a month. Ji Tianxing thought to himself, as expected, and asked again, "Then did you feel anything strange in these few days? For example, were there any special forces or traces of the blade's injuries?" This burial of heaven was silent for a long time, then it said in a low voice, "I checked it carefully, but I didn't find any special forces or traces. However, there are a total of 5 injuries on the blade. I have been trying my best to heal them, but only 4 injuries are healing. One of the injuries doesn't seem to be a big problem, and it is also very light, but there are no signs of recovery." Hearing this, Ji Tianxing vaguely guessed the answer. He hurriedly held the sword of burial of heaven and carefully examined it, looking for any damage on the blade. However, the damage to the burial of heaven was not on the surface, but on the internal structure of the divine sword. It was impossible to see with the naked eye. Therefore, Ji Tianxing could only use his God's Eye secret technique to carefully examine the internal structure of the divine sword. Not long after, he found 5 damaged areas from the extremely complicated internal structure. Under the guidance of the burial of heaven, he eliminated the 4 damages and finally locked onto the unrecoverable damage. At first he couldn't tell what was wrong with the injury. However, Ji Tianxing activated his divine sense and performed his ultimate skill. Finally, he found some clues. In that extremely small and negligible damage, there was actually a wisp of gray qi that seemed to be there but not there. "I've finally found it." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows as a glint flashed across his eyes. That wisp of gray qi was less than 1/100th the size of a strand of hair. There were no ripples of divine power and it seemed to have no attribute. Ji Tianxing was sure that this wisp of gray qi had nothing to do with the Taotai race or Tao Yongxing's divine power. However, it was this inconspicuous wisp of gray qi that had exposed his tracks and routes to Tao Yongxing's detection. The burial of heaven also realized and said with some self-blame, "No wonder Tao Yongxing could grasp our tracks. I hadn't thought that he would be so cunning. I was careless this time. Otherwise we wouldn't have been ambushed." Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and then a meaningful smile appeared on his face. He said, "You don't have to blame yourself. This may not be a mistake. Maybe it is our chance." "Chance? What chance?" The burial of heaven stilled and instinctively asked. Ji Tianxing said with a smile, "A chance to counterattack." "What do you plan to do?" The burial of heaven vaguely guessed his thoughts and asked. You'll know in a while." Ji Tianxing chuckled and began to cast a spell to retrieve that wisp of gray qi. At the border between the Ganyang domain and Clear Sky domain, the place where Ji Tianxing was ambushed previously had already become a wasteland with a radius of 100,000 miles. Flying across the sky, even from tens of thousands of miles away, the wasteland was still very conspicuous. At this time, Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and 3 Taotai race elders were standing above the wasteland, observing with solemn expressions. There was another group of people tens of thousands of miles away. They were also circling in the sky, carefully observing the battlefield. That group of people were Xianxia race experts. There were a total of 22 people. However, the strange thing was that there were only 2 God King experts in this group. The other 20 were all upper divine lords. The 2 God Kings were naturally Xianxia race clan leader Zhou Xian and right protector Min Tai. The 20 upper divine lords were all wearing blood-red armor. They were naturally the elites of the blood slaughter hall. Zhou Xian personally went out, But he only brought the Xianxia race's third strongest expert, right protector Min Tai. He did not bring an elder with him. This was because even someone as powerful as the left protector had been killed by Long Tian. It was meaningless for him to bring the elders. Instead, it would be life-threatening. The Xianxia race had already suffered heavy losses. They could not lose even one more elder. As for the elites of the Blood Slaughter Hall, even if 20 of them died in battle, it would not be so regrettable. Both sides observed the battlefield for a while before gathering together to meet. Chapter 36-43. There were teleportation arrays between the continents and regions of the Dragon Realm. There were also teleportation arrays between the main cities of the Clear Sky region and the Ganyang region. However, the teleportation arrays between the cities and regions were heavily guarded with layers of protection. Only people of high status were qualified to use those teleportation arrays. Because of the teleportation arrays, Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and Tao Yuxing were able to make it back in time after being shaken off by Ji Tianxing. Now the experts of the two clans had joined forces to kill Ji Tianxing and had to use the teleportation arrays to make it back in time. Zhou Xian drove the dark red divine warship and sped through the sky, heading straight for the main city closest to the border. There was a teleportation array in the main city that could teleport to an imperial city in the middle of the Ganyang region. Even if Ji Tianxing had been running for a day, they could still make it to the front to intercept him. In the main hall of the divine warship, Tao Yongxing used a secret technique and quickly found Ji Tianxing's location. That guy ran really fast. He actually escaped to the Surging Sun Empire. Currently he seems to be in the Surging Sun Lake. Tao Yongxing sat cross-legged in the main hall. The primordial chaos bell became 1 foot tall and floated in front of him. It spun slowly and flashed with divine light. He closed his eyes and used his mind to sense Ji Tianxing's location. The right guardian of the Xianxia clan who was guarding the main hall hurriedly reported to Zhou Xian when he heard the words, Surging Sun Lake. Zhou Xian immediately planned their route. They would first enter the main city at the border and use the teleportation array to reach the imperial city of the Surging Sun Empire. Then they would drive the divine warship to the Surging Sun Lake and kill Ji Tianxing on the way. After a while, Tao Yongxing suddenly raised his eyebrows as if he had understood something. He immediately grinned coldly. That guy is in the Surging Sun Lake. Why hasn't he moved after so long? Could it be that I understand. He must have been severely injured and hid in the Surging Sun Lake to recuperate from his injuries. He can't run away now. Just wait for death. Hearing Tao Yongxing's laughter, the high priest and the other elders looked expectant. Their eyes flashed with cold light. The distance from the border of the Ganyang region to the Surging Sun Empire's Surging Sun Lake was a total of 20 million li. Even if Zhou Xian personally steered the divine ship, it would still take him 20 hours to arrive. However, with the divine teleportation array and the time taken to travel, it only took them 2 hours to reach the imperial city of the Surging Sun Empire. Then Zhou Xian steered the divine ship and left the imperial city, rushing toward the gushing sun lake that was 300,000 miles away. Everyone knew that the heavily injured Long Tian was currently hiding in the gushing sun lake to recuperate and had not moved for a long time. This time it was the best opportunity to kill Long Tian. When Zhou Xian thought about how he would soon be able to obtain the dragon clan's bloodline and the high-level divine king's dragon corpse, his heart was filled with anticipation. At the same time, the death of the left protector and the 3 elders had brought him a lot of relief. Tao Yongxing, the high priest, and the others' feelings were similar to Zhou Xian's. Although they could only obtain the blood of the Rock clan and the Phoenix clan, they could avenge their clansmen by killing Long Tian. Most importantly, the Taotai clan's face and dignity were preserved. 45 minutes later, the blood-red divine ship that was thousands of feet long and shaped like a sharp shuttle arrived in the sky above the gushing sun lake. Under the golden sun, this huge lake with a radius of close to 50,000 miles was a scene of rolling waves and sparkling waves. This place was rich in divine power and resources. So many spirit beasts and demonic beasts were hiding in the lake. However, when the divine ship arrived, it brought with it an invisible pressure that caused many spirit beasts and demonic beasts to flee in panic. Those that could not escape in time hid in caves and lairs at the bottom of the lake, trembling. They did not dare to move at all. Xueshang followed the direction Tao Yongxing pointed and steered the divine ship toward the center of the lake. That kid is in the center of the lake. He should be hiding at the bottom of the lake. Head southeast about 20,000 miles away from us. That's right, Xueshang, you'd better conceal the aura of the divine ship so that you don't wake that kid up. Tao Yongxing pointed the way for Xueshang while reminding him to hide. Xueshang did not think much of it and smiled confidently. Since you're sure that the kid is still in the lake, he's definitely dead. Do we need to conceal our aura? Even if he wakes up and starts to run now, he won't be able to escape from me. Ha ha. Tao Yongxing laughed dryly and could not help but say, it's better to be careful. After all, that kid is very cunning. In a flash, the divine ship swept across 20,000 miles of the lake. After reaching the center of the lake, Xueshang immediately put away the divine ship. Swoosh. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Tao Yongxing and the 4 Taotai race god kings, Xueshang and the 21 Xianxia race experts all appeared above the lake. Everyone spread out and surround this place. Be careful. Tao Yongxing and Xueshang ordered in unison. All of a sudden, everyone spread out and formed an encirclement with a radius of 2,000 miles above the lake. Other than the 2 clan leaders, everyone took out their divine weapons and accumulated divine power in their bodies. They looked at the lake with vigilance. Tao Yongxing and Xueshang were empty-handed and stood above the lake calmly. The 2 looked at the calm lake under their feet and could not help but sneer. Ah, that kid still hasn't noticed that we're here. There's no reaction at all? It looks like he's seriously injured and has no time to care about anything else. While sneering, Xueshang waved his hand and sent out a dazzling divine light into the calm lake. Immediately, the lake water within a 100-mile radius was refined and disappeared into thin air. The dark red blood light formed a shield with a radius of 100 miles and a depth of 10,000 feet, separating the center of the lake from the rest of the world. Everyone could clearly see that there seemed to be a cave among several huge rocks at the bottom of the lake. Those rocks were protected by 2 divine formations and were flickering with a faint divine light. Tao Yongxing looked at the rocks and sneered mockingly, "Longtian, hurry up and come out to meet your death." The rolling sound waves contained a soul-shaking power that penetrated the 2 divine formations and enveloped those rocks. However, those rocks did not respond. Tianxing also did not show up. Xueshang frowned and vaguely had a bad premonition. He waved his hand and sent out several dazzling blood-red sword lights. Bang bang bang. Immediately, the 2 divine formations protecting the rocks were shattered by the blood-red sword lights. Those rocks were also cut open by the sword lights and rolled to the side. A dilapidated cave was revealed. Above the rubble on the ground, there was a crystal ball the size of an egg. Inside the translucent crystal ball, a tiny wisp of gray gas could be vaguely seen. However, Tianxing and the Sword of Burial of Heaven were nowhere to be seen. Seeing this scene, the expressions of Tao Yongxing, Xueshang, and more than 20 powerhouses froze, and their faces were full of shock. The next moment, Xueshang and Tao Yongxing reacted at the same time and could not help but exclaim, "Damn it! We've been fooled. Everyone be careful." Chapter 36-44. When they came, they were full of confidence. Who would have thought that after finding Long Tian's hiding place, they would end up empty-handed? Xueshang and Tao Yongxing's reactions were fast and alert. While the god kings and elites of the bloody slaughter hall were still in a daze, the 2 of them realized that the situation was bad. Not only did they realize that they had been tricked, but they also guessed that this was very likely a trap set by Long Tian. Even though the possibility of the heavily injured Long Tian setting up an ambush for so many experts was not high. Unless Long Tian was tired of living and wanted to die. However, Xueshang and Tao Yongxing were very cautious and did not rule out this possibility. After all, with Long Tian's daring character, nothing was impossible. As Xueshang and Tao Yongxing's exclamations sounded, the god kings and elites of the bloody slaughter hall came to their senses and hurriedly retreated. Everyone's attention was still focused on the rocks and the crystal ball. In their predictions, if Long Tian had set up an ambush here, the key would definitely be the crystal ball. Not only did the god kings and elites of the bloody slaughter hall think so, but even Xueshang thought so. Only Tao Yongxing was different. He stared at the crystal ball for a while and frowned. He cursed in his heart and quickly moved his gaze away to look around. Damn it! The formless primal chaos chi that I left in his sword was actually removed by him? That formless chaotic energy was hidden very well. How could he have discovered it? Without a doubt, that wisp of gray energy was the mark he left in the burial of heaven when he used the primordial chaos bell to fight with Ji Tianxing. With this mark he was able to track Ji Tianxing's position and escape route and find this place. Now the formless chaotic energy had been removed and Ji Tianxing had disappeared. Whether or not Ji Tianxing had set up an ambush, his plan to kill him had failed. However, this matter was not over yet. Just as everyone was on high alert, the surface of the lake in all directions suddenly lit up with divine light that soared into the sky. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Tens of thousands of starry sword lights soared into the sky from the bottom of the lake, instantly forming a silver light shield with a radius of 10,000 miles, sealing off this area. The heaven-destroying sword formation formed by 40,000 starry giant swords was formed. The sword formation was activated, releasing a formless pressure and sharp sword chi that pressed down from the sky. Immediately the expressions of the experts above the lake changed. Their eyes were filled with anger and worry. Damn it! That brat really set up an ambush here. Everyone, don't panic. We have so many people and we even have 2 clan leaders. What are we afraid of? I'm about to turn your bones into ashes, and you still dare to spout nonsense here? Why didn't you think of reconciliation when you massacred my clansmen? Now that you are in a desperate situation, you want to beg me for reconciliation? Wishful thinking. I will definitely kill you today and I will tear you into pieces. As soon as Tao Yongxing's voice fell, Zhou Xian turned to look at him and said expressionlessly, I said that his body and godhead are mine. If Tao Yongxing tore Long Tian's body into pieces and turned his bones into ashes, then how could he refine the Dragon Clan's bloodline? Tao Yongxing knew that he had misspoken and hurriedly explained, I just said it casually. Since we have an agreement, of course I will leave his corpse intact. High in the sky, Ji Tianxing retracted his gaze and no longer paid attention to Tao Yongxing. In fact, he had long expected that Tao Yongxing would have such a reaction. And he was only giving Tao Yongxing one last chance before he started the massacre. Then he looked at Zhou Xian and said expressionlessly, Zhou Xian, this is a grudge between me and the Taotai clan. It has nothing to do with the Xianxia clan. If you are smart enough, it's best to take your people and leave. Otherwise, not only will you not get any benefits but you will also sink deeper and deeper. Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, Zhou Xian sneered disdainfully and interrupted him. Ah! How laughable and pitiful. Long Tian, is this how you admit defeat and beg to surrender? If you obediently lay down your arms and surrender, kowtow to me and admit your wrongdoings, perhaps I will grant you a quick death. As soon as Zhou Xian's voice fell, the powerhouses of the 2 clans laughed loudly. They looked at Ji Tianxing with eyes full of contempt and ridicule. Ji Tianxing still looked indifferent and said calmly, I have said what I should say. Since you insist on seeking death, then I will grant you your wish. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.